of law is not just some lawyer's turn of phrase. It is the very foundation of our democracy. The essence of the rule of law is that like cases are treated alike. That there not be one rule for Democrats and another for Republicans, one rule for the powerful, another for the powerless, one rule for the rich and another for the poor, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity. To serve as Attorney General at this critical time is a calling I am honored and eager to answer.
So now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 121 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It is Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. I'm your host, Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Strzok. Allison, we have a lot of news today, including, finally, the final report of the 4-year Durham investigation into the origins of the Russia investigation, and the House Republican report on the Bidens.
Yeah, so to speak, right? All of that is in quotes. And we have the former Manhattan prosecutor Pomerantz's testimony to House Republicans, along with the Fani Willis response to Trump's lawsuit to quash her special purpose grand jury report and subsequent indictments. But first, we need to thank our new patrons. And Pete, we have so many new patrons this week, and I think it all has to do with your very blue rant montage that our editors so artfully put together this weekend from our bonus episode. So I appreciate that. I had so much fun doing that bonus episode this weekend. So thanks to our patrons. If you want to sign up to be a patron, you can do it at patreon.com/aisle45pod. That's AISLE 45POD. And we have so many, we're going to split them up. Here's the first little bit. Thanks to Mark Krause, somebody who said, I was left unsupervised. Jane Ditmar, Jennifer, Sean Todd, KB, Erica Gott, Don Schamberger, Margot N.H., Lisa Rollison, Jerry Goodridge, Brenda Piniella Rouse High, and Allie Salinas. So thanks to our first group of new patrons. And Pete, why don't we kick this off with the dun 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 Durham report? 300 pages of a sad man crying. I don't really know how else to put it.
No, I don't either. Look, I mean, 4 years, truly 4 years, more than twice the time it took Mueller to complete his, dozens upon dozens of indictment and, countless, well, not countless, but 7 or 8 convictions in half the time. John Durham
37 entities and individuals charged, 199 crimes.
Right.
And that sounds like some sort of
disinformation agents in St. Petersburg working as contractors for the government of Russia to sow disinformation to attack our elections in 2016. All of that in more than twice the time. John Durham comes out with a, less than 100 pages. What is that? 95 pages a year. Essentially, referencing that they gathered 1 million documents and conducted 490 views. But at the end of the day, there's nothing there. There is nothing new. These substantive things were, one, either revealed and reported on by the Department of Justice Inspector General Mike Horowitz, or the, 2 failed prosecutions that he brought against Michael Sussman and Igor Danchenko. But at the very end of this long report, it culminates in literally one recommendation consisting of half a page, recommending that the FBI or DOJ set up an in-house official who can challenge assumptions in very high-profile investigations. So that's it, taxpayer. That's what you get for your money. A 4-year, $8 or $9 million editorial, essentially. And to say, I wouldn't say disappointed so much as aggravated, and really just the obscenity of the misuse of his office in what Donald Trump wanted, in what Bill Barr wanted. And after getting appointed in 2019, you'll remember that Horowitz announced the findings of his look in 2019 and found that it was properly predicated. And, John Durham, prosecutor, U.S. attorney, breaks generations of practice of U.S. attorneys and actually makes a statement saying, no, I disagree with the genesis of the investigations, throwing out this kind of statement, even though he'd just begun, and then spent the next 4 years, chasing that theory. And at the end of the day, what it looks like, if you boil down his, argument, it's like, well, the FBI should have opened a preliminary investigation instead of a full investigation. In other words, everything was done right, but he just wanted to call it something else. And, keep in mind, he does, in the very same report, he mentions specifically a case out of the FBI's Washington field office that was opened on the Clinton Foundation solely on the basis of a book by the name of Clinton Cash, which was written by a guy named Peter Schweitzer. The book was financed. Literally, you can go on Wikipedia and look up Clinton Cash. It was bankrolled by the Mercers, a far-right, wealthy, set of donors, family of donors who give money to extreme causes, and made use of researchers from an organization that Schweitzer and Steve Bannon put together. So Durham is fine with the FBI opening a case on the Clintons entirely on such crap, but something that comes from, I can now say it because John Durham got it declassified, the Australian ambassador to the United Kingdom, a senior diplomat, he was the foreign minister of Australia, brings the FBI information saying, I personally met with George Papadopoulos, who said that somebody in the Trump campaign received an offer of assistance from the government of Russia, that somehow it is inappropriate for the FBI to open that investigation. But meanwhile, this piece of Oppo trash coming out of the right, looking at, bogus allegations against Clinton, is perfectly fine to open a case there. And well, it should have been a full rather than a PI, or the other way around. Should have been a PI than a full. It's complete crap. It's at odds with what Horowitz found back in 2019. There's nothing substantively new that was found since Horowitz issued his report in 2019. And then it goes through and it just throws up crap. It is like a parade of right-wing unsupported causes that he goes through, talking about the Steele dossier. Durham doesn't go quite so far as to saying it was false. He implies that it played a critical role at the beginning, but he doesn't ever say, hey, this had no role in opening Crossfire Hurricane. And at the end of the day, there aren't, there's nothing new there. The one conviction he got of an attorney named Kevin Kleinsmith, which he pled, was based entirely on facts that were uncovered by Mike Horowitz. And Allison, I liked, one of the things we were talking about before today's episode, you were saying when it was clear that the report was coming, but it wasn't quite out yet. And you made the point of look, there's this New York Times reporting a couple of months ago that indicated that when Bill Barr, on his government aircraft, his private jet, hopped in that jet for a round-the-world international junket with John Durham, because think again, how often and appropriate is it for an attorney general to go flying around the world to conduct sort of the, leather on the street, gumshoe detective work? They go to the Italians because they're trying to
leather gumshoe.
Italian leather, fine Corinthian leather. I guess that's North Africa, right? Corinthia was like modern day Libya, maybe. Anyway, but fine. I love Italian
how we both go right there to Ricardo Montalban.
So they go there because they're trying to track down the George Papadopoulos theory of the case, right? That Mifsud, this professor, was actually a deep state asset and was working at the behest of the FBI and or the CIA or the Bilderbergers or the Illuminati. Somebody, they go chasing this George Papadopoulos theory of the case. Now, mind you, if you read John Durham's report, the name Mifsud does not appear once. In fact, their trip to Italy does not appear once. But more importantly, Allison, to what you were looking for, the New York Times reported they go over there chasing this half-ass coffee boy conspiracy theory. They don't find that. But what they do find, according to the Washington Post, is the Italians come to them and say, hey, here are allegations about financial crimes committed by Donald Trump. And so, they go there looking for a fucking unicorn and they get a pile of steaming Trump crap dumped in their lap. And according to the New York Times, rather than having anybody else investigate it, Barr says to Durham, hey, you look into this. Well, what became of that?
And the way that it was publicly reported was, Bill Barr now gives Durham prosecutorial powers because of something he found in the investigation into the oranges of the Russia probe. And it's the DOJ, I'm pretty sure the leak came from Barr there, made it seem like, it's the Clintons. They did something in Italy or whatever. They didn't even bring up any of it, any detail, but they made it sound like it was because of the amazing work Durham was doing investigating the origins of the Russian probe that now he's been given prosecutorial powers that he didn't previously have, which is weird because I'm pretty sure all special counsel gets that. But regardless, what in actuality was happening was Barr was giving Durham prosecutorial investigatory powers so that he could look into the Trump crime.
Right. And Allison, I mean, I can tell you from setting up the Mueller Special Counsel Office, anything you want to do about the allegations of financial wrongdoing by Trump is going to be complex. I mean, his financial empire is so large. There is no way a team the size of Durham's, which, nobody's published how big it is, but I've been led to understand it's significantly smaller than what Mueller had. There's no way they have the investigative expertise to sit and do a complex review of the Trump, anything alleging sort of malfeasance by Trump in a financial environment. So, but part of the special counsel regulation says, report what you investigated and found, and whether or not you prosecuted it, explain why. Well, where's this allegation, right? Where's any mention of it? Where's any sort of assurance that Barr did not specifically give it to Durham, just like he gave the other stuff with a particular political goal in mind, and that Durham deep-sixed it exactly as Barr wanted it. So, whether that comes out, Jim Jordan has invited Durham to appear next week. I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm certain folks like, our friends Representative Goldman and Plaska and others will Debbie Wasserman Schultz do a fine job of teasing out potentially some of those details. But, going through this, and it's frustrating. I need to sit there and decide whether I, write down like some long list of observations about the problems with the report. But one of the things in there that I found particularly aggravating, Durham mentions that he's thanking everybody at the beginning, right? He thanks Merrick Garland for not getting involved and letting him do his job. He thanks these different components of the, technical folks and admin folks at the FBI and DOJ. And one of the things he says is that, and FBI employees, most of whom agreed to be interviewed. And for those that didn't, he thanks FBI leadership for intervening to essentially convince them to sit down for an interview. Now, we need to step back for a second, and it goes to exactly what you were saying about the difference between, what was Durham? Was it a criminal investigation? Was it an administrative review? And, criminal investigations people are familiar with, right? That's what U.S. attorneys' offices do. They work with agents. They investigate crimes and violations of federal law. If they find violations of federal law, they take that evidence and they obtain a charging document and they take it to trial. On the other side, administratively, if there's sort of like, wrongdoing or, indications that something has gone wrong or in need of reform, well, that's why you have inspectors general. That's why you have internal inspection divisions, people that go out and can look at various things and compel. And the difference is, in this case, you can compel people. You can say, hey, look, you have to sit down and talk to us. You must sit down and give us an interview. And, on the one hand, and if you don't, you're going to lose your job. But because it is a compelled interview, employees maintain the ability not to be prosecuted for that. Courts have decided that, look, if you're going to compel an employee to talk, A, they must talk or be fired. But B, you can't fire them, or you can't, if they sit down and they talk about wrongdoing and implicate themselves, you can't use that against them because you can compel them. So they're two different, it's like apples and oranges. And you don't want to combine those two because on the criminal side, because you are talking about the ability to use somebody's statement against them and their right to not sort of inculpate themselves, the protections about compelled interviews are very, very strong on the criminal prosecution side. Well, the problem is, Durham's he's so deeply on the fence, he's got splinters in his ass because on the one hand, he's trying to sit there and bring these half-assed prosecutions. On the other side, half of this report is written like some meandering, sort of quasi IG review. But why it's really important in the context of those FBI employees who didn't know if they wanted to interview with him and were told, encouraged, quote unquote, by the FBI leadership to sit down with him. Okay, well, is that a voluntary interview? It sure doesn't sound like it. If FBI leadership sits down with you and says, hey, I know you don't want to talk to him, but you really need to, that's not really voluntary. And if that's not voluntary, anything they said in there certainly can't be used against them. And there are a couple of court cases, one by the name of Garrity, one by the name of Conkines, and you'll hear things like Conkines warning or Garrity concerns, and that just talks about this. If people make a statement that is compelled, it can't be used against them. But were those precedents followed by Durham? Were any of those interviews used in the course of the Sussman or Danchenko investigations? Good question. I hope he gets asked that next week. And a good example of that, if you go back, I think it was 2009, a series of Blackwater guards were engaged in, I think it was Tahrir Square, where they opened fire on a group of Iraqis and killed a number of people. In the course of that investigation, Department of State investigators directed, I think it was the Blackwater contractors, but it might have been other like Foreign Service nationals or State Department employees. You must interview with us, right? We are compelling you. You must sit down and talk to us and give us a statement. And then when they started saying things like, yeah, I opened fire, or I saw Fred open fire, all of a sudden they're making these statements that then later the government tried to use in the criminal trial. And the judge threw the whole thing out because of that. He said, look, you can't, on the one hand, compel them to make these statements at the threat of the loss of their job, and then on the other hand, try and use it in a criminal setting. So we know Durham was pursuing criminal trials, or prosecutions. He pursued 3. 2 of them flopped. But there's just a lot of this fast and loose sort of playing with the facts, playing with the rules, and it's just aggravating to page through it. I'm going to sit down and read each and every page. I've scanned all of it, but it just, I need to take little bites because it aggravates me each bite.
Yeah, and it's not really well written either, as an aside. But yeah, there's just tons of stuff missing from here. Empty Wheel does a really good thread on it on Twitter. I would encourage you to check that thread out. I wanted to know more about, who's Simona Mangianti. That would have been nice to learn. But by the way, that was Papadopoulos's fiance, and nobody really knew where she was from. I think I know, but anyway.
Please, Allison, that's an Italian. That's more of that Italian. That's an Italian accent. It's a Sicilian accent. It certainly isn't a Slavic or, dare I say it, Russian accent.
It's not at all Russian.
Not
it's
at
totally
all.
Russian.
Yeah, and obviously this is tongue-in-cheek if you haven't heard her speak.
Yeah,
look her up
and I'm just wondering how many times she's been on Deripaska's yacht with Nastya Rybka. I'm just a questions. I just have I have questions.
Just asking the questions. Just asking questions.
Body Ventura. But I do think it's important that we say, Merrick Garland attached a letter saying, here it is in its entirety. I didn't change it. I'm not spinning it. I'm not going to go do a press conference on the release of this report. I'd like nothing. It's the absolute opposite of what Bill Barr did to the Mueller investigation. And there's no redaction, like nothing, because as we know, it was found later by Judge Reggie Walton that many of the redactions of the Mueller report made by Bill Barr were considered inappropriate. They have since been lifted because he was trying to downplay the scope and the breadth of the Russian interference in our elections at the behest of Donald Trump, no doubt. All right. Given all that, we have more news to get to. And I almost feel bad that we spent that much time even talking about the Durham report. And as much as I want to go into it and explain how all of it's wrong, I just feel like it doesn't deserve any more attention. It's going to end up in our rearview mirrors as a laughingstock investigation that wasted money. I mean, at least the Mueller probe paid for itself with asset forfeiture like 5 times over. But here we are, and now we're out that tax money. Why isn't anybody bringing this up in the negotiations on the debt ceiling with McCarthy? I'm not sure, but maybe we can try to get that money back somewhere else besides work requirements. We have to take a quick break. We're going to be right back, where we have a lot more news to discuss. Stick around. Hey, everybody, welcome back. I have some more patrons to give a shout out to. Thanks to Heather Beaudry, Estelle Gabriel, Deb, Mummy Rose, Hope Jones, Lori Higgins, Lisa, Kate Black. Just here to hear Pete swear.
There you go.
Mitch Siped, Kim Leslie, Robin Guyman, Rachel Broderick. I'm sorry if I mispronounced any of those names, but thank you again. You make the show possible. Now, Pete, as we've been waiting for, a response to Trump's 51-page lawsuit trying to block the special purpose grand jury report. We're down in Georgia now, Fulton County, with the district attorney, Fani Willis, and Trump's 51-page lawsuit trying to block the special grand jury report, quash indictments, remove Fani Willis as the prosecutor. Her response was due May 15th, and we have it. So let's take a look. It opens up with the DA's office reminding us what Trump was asking for in his 51-page lawsuit. He wanted to quash and expunge the special purpose grand jury final report. He wanted all evidence in it to be suppressed so it couldn't be used in future proceedings. And he wanted the DA to be disqualified from this and any further investigation or prosecution. So that's sort of the ask. And this is what Fani Willis is responding. She's saying, no, we just deny all these motions, dismiss or deny, whatever you feel like. And then we, of course, know the fraudulent elector Kathy Latham has joined the Trump lawsuit and added her own motions to quash the report in its entirety and join any state entity from utilizing any evidence or testimony in the report. And she requested a hearing and that the matter actually be given to another judge.
A couple of things to realize. One, there's a really, really high standard you have to meet if you want to have a prosecutor removed. And I don't think there's, from what I've seen from legal experts who are familiar with the Georgia state law, there's very little chance that this is going to succeed on its merits. And as far as, these sort of Me Too, like, well, I don't want it to be used by any state entity for any evidence or testimony, and just there's a lot of feels, but there's not a lot of law. So I don't know that there's going to be, I have a strong suspicion that this Trump's lawsuit is going to fall, and as well as Latham's, is going to fall quite flat. The good news is that, because we have the sort of system of justice that we do, we get to see when Fani Willis responds and says, look, no, this is absolutely wrong. Here are all the reasons why. We can sit there and understand just how absurd and ridiculous what Trump is trying to do with his lawsuit. So, my hope is that all of the motions are either going to get dismissed or denied. I think, we will see whatever the court's reasoning is. We'll see that whenever they issue the order. But, the main thing here is time. I don't know that Trump has any real expectation of success. This is for him, though, absolutely another opportunity to throw a little sand in the gears, add a month, add 2 months, add 3 months into the process, which just pushes this case further down the line. I don't think the court's going to have a lot of toleration for it. And so I would expect to see a fairly quick turnaround from the court.
Yeah, and I'll go even as far as saying that most of these, if not all of these, will be dismissed or denied on the three main things that Trump accusations are always dismissed and denied on: standing, jurisdiction, and lack of harm. And just absolute
lack of sense, lack of law.
That as well. I mean, they don't even have any. They can't back anything up. So this is what the DA argues. First of all, they have no standing. Right. Like you said, for you to come in, Kathy Latham, for example, and say no one in the state can do this, that there's just no standing to do that. They've failed to demonstrate unconstitutionality. There's nothing ambiguous or vague about the law in Georgia. They fail to meet the exacting standards, Pete, that you mentioned to remove the DA from the case. They have no argument on that. They just don't like her. They failed to demonstrate that the special purpose grand jury was tainted, or that somehow their constitutional due process rights were messed up. So there's no harm there, right? That falls into that third category. And they provide no basis to give this to another judge at all. There's no basis. There's no, and the great thing about this is, if you want to really get to the merits, here's why they all suck and here's the case law. But we don't even have to get there because there's no standing, there's no injury here, there's no harm, and there's no jurisdiction. This court doesn't have jurisdiction to be able to say that no state entity can use anything in this special purpose grand jury report. So I think that some of these will be denied on standing, some will be denied on jurisdictional issues, and the rest, if they just don't have, they've made no reasonable argument in the law, and they've shown no injury. Like you have to, if you're suing somebody, that you have to prove that you're being injured. And they've failed to do that on multiple motions in this particular lawsuit. So I think that we'll see a pretty quick turnaround from its Judge Juan Merchan on this case. And I think that these will all be summarily dismissed or denied. And she even said, you can dismiss or deny whatever you feel like that day is fine with us. So I think, like I said, that's those are my predictions on how this will go. And I'm assuming by the time we record our bonus episode this weekend for Cleanup on Aisle 45 for patrons, that we'll have our answer to this lawsuit. Although I'm not sure, I don't think there is a reply on the schedule. I think this is the final filing for consideration, at least to get a hearing. And we'll see. Maybe they get a hearing so that they, for due process purposes, so the judge can hear the arguments from both sides before he dismisses everything whole cloth. But I would imagine, because I've seen a lot of these, the reason that Trump is so successful in delaying these cases by month, 2 month, 3 months, by filing these ridiculous lawsuits that have no merit and no basis and no standing and no jurisdiction, is because the judges really want to go out of their way, particularly in these high profile, politically charged cases, to put the due process in place so that whatever comes out of this investigation, the charging decisions that are going to come out between July 11th and September 1st, will hold up on appeal, right? Because you don't want Trump to come back and say, I never got to argue about my tremendous lawsuit, my perfect lawsuit. I never got to argue it. And you don't want that to have to overturn the convictions, go back and then settle those and then redo the convictions. And that's, I think, what they're trying to avoid. And that's why he's so successful at delaying these 2 to 3 months. He knows, because he's the former president, and that these are high profile cases, that they have to cross their T's and dot their I's when it comes to due process, because, it's all part of the, if you're going to aim for the king, you best not miss type situation. So we'll see how it pans out. We'll see if a hearing is granted. I tend to think not, and I think most of these motions will be dismissed, but who knows? We'll see.
Yep, looking forward to it. I mean, I'll be pleased if you're right and we get something that fast, but I don't think in any case it's going to take much longer. I mean, if it takes more than by the end of this week, it won't take a lot longer, and hopefully the judge is already thinking about the arguments that Fani Willis provided, and this is just, nice corroboration, but I agree with you. I don't think they're going to stand the test of judicial scrutiny.
Yeah, no, not at all. All right, everybody, we have some Jim Jordan shenanigans to report on, and some Jim Comer, the two Jims shenanigans, the Jim shenanigans to report on. But we have to take a quick break, so stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back. Allison, before we get on to the next topic, I do want to, come for the news, stay for the odd cultural reference. As it turns out, Corinth is a city, an ancient city in Greece. It separated the mainland of Greece from the Peloponnese. Why that's important is in the context of fine Corinthian leather. Turns out that is entirely made up. The advertising agency Bozell in 1974 came up with the term to describe leather upholstery used in certain Chrysler luxury vehicles. And though merely a marketing concept, according to Wikipedia, it suggested a premium product, quote, something rich in quality, rare and luxurious, much as what you would expect Bill
from
Barr
a Bill Barr
to on
shoe
his
leather investigation
leather
in Italy.
And spats, which he puts on when he does go out on the town to conduct investigation with foreign liaison personnel. Anyway, just wanted to...
unless he's appearing at Texas A&M and then he puts on his spurs, right?
I don't want to know what he does when he's deep in the heart of Texas. That sounds like something, some oddness that this is a family show, Allison, and we don't want to... Don't go there. Anyway.
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
All right, with that clear about Corinthian leather, let's get back to the news. But first, even more patrons to thank. This is amazing, and I just can't thank all of you enough for your support and allowing us to do everything that we do. So to Mitchell Johnson, to M.W., Jan Rotkus, Shelby, Karen McGlynn, C. et al. Rocks, Chris K., Venomous Feminist, Sassy and Smartassy, Deborah Welsh, Deborah Wazinski, and Gwendolyn Walton. Thank all of you. Just amazing support, and thank all of you for allowing us again to put this podcast together every week. So, unsurprisingly, the Republicans on the House Oversight Committee have released their report onto their investigation into President Biden and his family. And unfortunately, much like the Durham report, there's not much to discuss. There's an amazing article, if only for the photograph that accompanies it, from Luke Broadwater at the New York Times, which notes that after 4 months of investigation, House Republicans who promised to use their new majority to unearth evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden acknowledged last Wednesday that they had yet to uncover incriminating material about him, despite their frequent insinuations that he and his family have been involved in criminal conduct and corruption. Now, their report says that some of the president's relatives were paid more than $10 million from foreign sources between 2015 and 2017, and they claim that's proof of what they're calling influence peddling. Well, I got to say, $10 million over the course of 2 years? That's influence peddling?
Influence peddling?
Great. Let's keep that in mind. And if that $10 million represents influence peddling, tell me what $2 billion to Jared Kushner from MBS represents. So, $10 million influence peddling, 200 times that? Yeah, 200 times that. What does that represent to the president's son-in-law? Just asking questions. And so, we go and let's, continue down the list. Let's go Apollo and Citigroup. Their meetings in the Oval Office and, eventually paying off Kushner mortgages or financial concerns. Let's talk about Michael Cohen's essential...
666 Fifth Avenue building, right? And by the way, I have to remind you, Pete, this little list that I just threw together, this is just off the top of my head. I could actually probably come up with a much longer list here.
Yeah, and it's exactly right. And I'm going through and I'm like, oh, well, you didn't think of that. And there's this thing. But Michael Cohen's essential consulting slush fund, the $108 million inaugural, Trump's secret Chinese bank account, $10 million from Erdogan to, I don't want to, you said that. I'm not going to confirm or deny whether or not that happened and who it was from. Ivanka's Chinese trademarks. We've heard about the Jolo and Broidy's $75 million to stop a probe into them. Benkowski and Rudy. Let's talk about the Trump International Hotel and every foreign delegation that came into town who got suites of rooms there while they were visiting. You're right. This is nothing that you or I sat down and kind of did a diligent search going through business reporting. These are just like 10, however many that is, 10, 11 things just sort of off the top of your head. So some notion now that the Republicans sitting there on Wednesday saying, hey, we found proof in this $10 million, which they concede, nothing illegal about it. But they said, hey, we have yet to find evidence of a specific corrupt action Biden took in connection with any of the business deals that his son entered into. After we've all heard about this for months and months and months, still haven't come up with any evidence of a specific corrupt action.
And let me just find that, the Comer, they've been looking into this since January, whatever. There has been an ongoing, almost 5-year-long investigation by David Weiss, who was appointed by Trump and assigned by Bill Barr to investigate Hunter's business dealings. And all they found in this 4 years, and they haven't even brought charges yet. It seemed like the whole thing sort of wrapped up a year ago, according to public reporting, this David Weiss investigation into Hunter Biden. And there have been no charges, which makes me think, this reminds me a lot of when they were trying real hard to get a grand jury to indict Andy McCabe for making false statements. And then they went to a second grand jury and they still couldn't secure an indictment. And I'm sitting here thinking, you keep trying, but wow, if you can't get a federal grand jury to issue an indictment, you don't have a case. It's really the standard is probable cause to issue that indictment. They'll indict a ham sandwich, as we've heard a million times. But so 4 years, almost 5 years, nothing. It seems like it stopped about a year ago. And all they've been able to come up with were some unpaid taxes, which have since been paid, and a possible gun charge. And this is actually a serious charge. Lying on a form saying you weren't using drugs in order to get a permit to carry a firearm. Is weird that the Republicans would be cheering on them coming for anybody's guns. But, that could be a potential charge here. And I have said, and I have long said, look, if you find crimes, first of all, to talk about predication to open an investigation, this is purely political. We know that Trump was trying to get Ukraine, Zelensky, to open an investigation into the Bidens, just for the appearance. You don't even have to really investigate. Just open it up. We know he was trying to get his Department of Justice after the election loss to look into voter fraud. Like, you don't have to just say you're investigating it, and me and the Republicans in Congress will do the rest. Just the appearance of the just say you're investigating. And here we have, we're going to investigate Hunter Biden. Of course it's for political reasons. So let's talk about weaponization another day, Jim Jordan. But, here now we've got 4 years, a gun charge maybe. I don't think they'll bring tax charges. If they do, this whole thing was predicated on for political reasons. But as I've said, if he broke the law, fine. Take him to court, see if you can get a conviction, sentence him, and have him do his time. But, to pretend that the weaponization is all on one side is just absolutely ridiculous. And how much money has been spent on this 4-year bullshit investigation, of a private citizen? And I promise you, had Weiss, this investigation of Hunter Biden found any financial corrupt transactions that had to do with anybody else in the family or anybody in the Biden administration, and this was, by the way, when he was the vice president, it would have come out. There would be an investigation. There would be, if there was crimes, there would be charges. There's nothing here, just like in the Durham probe.
Yeah, and there's a reasonableness about what DOJ should or shouldn't do. This alleged, crime of lying on the gun form happened in 2018. So that's 5 years ago. And I think what you're seeing is, certainly a little bit more of an aggressive posture on the part of Hunter Biden's attorneys to start making some noise about, look, how long does this man need to sit in limbo waiting to find out whether or not you're going to issue charges? You're not, by all accounts, this lie, if it occurred, happened 5 years ago. You don't need, it's not like you're actively investigating that crime as it unfolded yesterday. You've done it. You were talking about charging it last year. So much like Andy, much like all of us, me included, who were sitting there while Durham was taking his 4 years saying, you're going to jail, you're going to Guantanamo. At some point, there hits a unreasonable point in time where, out of fairness, DOJ needs to make a decision. And I'm with you. If people broke the law, charge them, try them. And if a jury finds that they did, then they need that punishment. But to sit here just apparently, I don't know what's going on, but waiting and waiting and waiting for anybody. There comes a point where it's like, enough. Why should I have my life in limbo? Why should I be worried? Why should my family be worried about what is or isn't going to happen to me? Why should employers be asking whether or not I'm in fact going to be indicted and going to jail? At some point, make up your mind and pay the political consequences to whichever side is going to be unhappy with your decision. Because one side is going to be unhappy. There is no outcome here that one side is, both sides are pleased. So follow the law. Assess what evidence you have from these 4 years you've been investigating, apparently a fact that happened 5 years ago, and decide. Because we're halfway through May.
Yeah, and it's not a special counsel probe. Because this isn't under special counsel regulations, the DOJ doesn't have to announce their declination to prosecute or give any reasons why. Although, because this is a high-profile case, if they do decline to prosecute, I might expect to see, much like they did with Rudy Giuliani and the raid on his place where they decided they weren't going to press any charges, I would expect to see some sort of an announcement like that, or at least we're not going to, and maybe not specifically say why, but they don't have to. And I mean, this is Weiss. This is a Trump appointee. He might decide to just sort of take his crayons and go home and not really say anything about it after what I consider to be a complete failure of an investigation that shouldn't have been opened in the first place, and the opening of which is true and honest weaponization of the Department of Justice. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you're right, Allison. I mean, I would not anticipate DOJ because exactly as you said, he is not a special counsel. There's not an obligation to create a report. I don't expect, if they don't charge, I don't expect that they would announce that publicly. I do expect they would tell Hunter Biden's attorneys, we've closed our case, or it's not, it was something to let them know it's done, and that you very quickly would hear that, right? An announcement that, U.S. Attorney Weiss informed us that Hunter Biden is no longer a subject of whatever it is, but that when and if we hear about a non-prosecution, it won't come via that route. So again, we're summer. We're the summer of 2023. You decide. Let's move on here.
Well, I think the statute of limitations would force their hand at some point. I mean, this is, like you said, almost a 5-year crime, and I think that that's a 5-year statute of limitations. At least that is true for most federal cases. But I also don't know when they found out about it, and there's other mitigating factors. It can get weird.
Exactly right. If there's some indication that Hunter or people around him lied about it, it could toll. Or I would need to research it some. But say he, when first asked about it, said that he didn't do something or that he did do something, and they're concerned that he, in the context of that false application, he later made a false statement or obstructed something. You can lengthen that out. But again, we're getting way deep into speculation about stuff that nobody knows outside of DOJ.
All right. Well, we'll see how it shakes out. I imagine at some point soon we'll hear something, or maybe nothing. I'm not sure. But again, the investigation's been over for a year now, ongoing for 3 years prior to that, and we still don't have any charges. We'll see. All right, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Comer and his informant to his whistleblower, and whose name is George Glass. It's my boyfriend from Canada. You wouldn't know him. And also Pomerantz's opening statement and behind closed doors testimony to the same committee. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, we're back. And here's our last group of new patrons this week. Thank you so much again. And so many people responding, Pete, to your rants, your swear-laced rants. I love this. We had to split them up into 4 groups. So thank you to Dana Fortier, Sally Russell, Waverly Ford, Florence Rothenberg, Paula Fries, Isle of Peach Truck, Wheel of Peach Truck, Rigging Engineer, Cranes Not Elections, a rigging engineer, Cranes Not Elections. Awesome. Sharon Halstead, Julie Cradle, Leah Robbins, Christy Sider, and Marsha Ford. Thank you again so much. You make the show possible. All right, Pete. Let's talk about what's going on with Jim Comer's whistleblower informant, who now is apparently missing. They've lost track of him. He could be in jail. He said most of their informants are either in jail or on the lam or spies, I guess, and so they're hard to find. Okay.
I swear there's a small house on Capitol Hill where folks like Comer, as well as Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, go to the small row house, and I envision it like some Mel Brooks movie, and it's got a big shingle out front that says Republican informants and whistleblowers. And it's just, the oddest group of non-credible shenanigans that you could imagine. That, yes, they've lost their top witness, gone, poof, out into the air or the void. So I guess, so the first I think it came up was an interview that he conducted with Maria Bartiromo, and it's a fantastic back and forth. I mean, again, feels like a Brooks movie. She says, "You have spoken with the whistleblowers. You also spoke with an informant who gave you all of this information. Where's that informant today? Where are these whistleblowers?" Comer responds, "Well, unfortunately, we can't track down the informant. We're hopeful that the informant is still there. The whistleblower knows the informant. The whistleblower who knows about the informant is very credible." So I added a little bit. So, I mean, it's this absurd notional game of who's on first, where they have yet to produce a single bit of evidence, let alone a name of some informant or whistleblower. And then Comer comes back on Monday and he says, well, there's an informant. The one that the committee lost touch with isn't related to the committee's demand that the FBI hand over internal investigative notes about President Joe Biden. which presumably came from a different informant. So now it is truly there's a whistleblower, there's informant. It is different from the informant that provided information to the FBI about some unrelated matter. None of these people providing a single bit of hard information that the Republicans have been able to produce. And,
or use for anything.
Right. And some of it, so Jessica Collins, the communications director for the House Oversight Committee, told Time in an email that, quote, to clear all this up, of course, the whistleblower who has come forward about the FBI record alleging that then Vice President Joe Biden engaged in a bribery scheme with a foreign national isn't missing. And continuing, Comer actually, quote, was referring to another whistleblower regarding the Biden's family influence peddling schemes. So clear, right? Everybody, we now know exactly what, the odd parade of hamsters on, sort of spinning wheels in Comer's head as he tries to explain the scheme of wrongdoing by President Joe Biden and his family is getting muddier by the day. And the cat is like, yes, I see
the
through
cat
this.
has strong opinions
I have
on Comer.
feelings, and he's a moron.
Well,
they're all
what
morons.
the cat knows is that, recently, and we talked to Congressman Goldman about this, there were witness interviews of 3 of their quote-unquote whistleblowers, and they found that these whistleblowers were paid cash money and given jobs by folks like Kash Patel in order to become whistleblowers. And it also reminds me of Rudy's band of misfit election fraud affidavit signers. Carone and the like, all of whom ended up on Saturday Night Live. So the question of the day, Pete, is who is going to play this informant to the whistleblower on the cold opening of the next season of Saturday Night Live?
I would somebody like John C. Reilly would be great. And the thing, and just the use of the word, I feel dirty using the word whistleblowers. They're not whistleblowers. At least not in the context of the people we've seen coming forward about malfeasance at the FBI. They are disgruntled employees, many of whom had performance problems, many of whom did not believe that January 6th was a thing and were conscientious objectors about going out and arresting people who stormed the Capitol as part of an insurrection. So let's pump the brake a little bit on the use of the term whistleblowers, because that's not what they are. And
yeah, the other thing too is that this whistleblower and the informant to the whistleblower is who's missing. But you can't be whistleblowers have direct knowledge. Whistleblowers don't have teams of informants that inform them and then they blow the whistle. That's not how whistleblowing works. So, and if these whistleblowers aren't even within the government and they're in jail, or first of all, if they're in jail, they should be easy to find and interview. But if they're in jail or they're arms dealers or they're spies, and you can't get a hold of them, that doesn't sound to me like you have a very credible informant, or whatever you want to call them. It just, to me, it sounds like somebody said some squirrely shit, probably Russian disinformation. The Republicans are very good at bringing Russian disinformation into congressional hearings. We saw Ron Johnson do it. We saw Rudy do it with his little manila envelope that he sent to House Republicans back in the day, Nunes and all that. But, it sounds like some guy heard from some other guy that there was some Biden bribery or peddling influence happening, and went to the FBI and gave a statement, and the FBI said, yeah, cool, thanks, bro. And, maybe they looked into it probably and found nothing, and then that's the end. But the other thing that really surprised me is when everybody, all the right-wing media pundits are saying the FBI is refusing to hand over this document written by the whistleblower, informed on by the informant who's now missing, dead, or in jail, or out doing spy stuff. And, I just think that, the whole thing is just so ridiculous, Pete, that there's, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what your thoughts are on that piece of it.
Well, it's horribly, both incompetent as well as transparently political. I mean, this is the same group that, God, we heard for years from Devin Nunes about the Steele dossier and Kash Patel and all the malfeasance that was going. I mean, this is a tenth as credible as anything that was put together by Steele and his subsources. And so, on this, now that is back in the news, and a question about, whether or not that was true, not true, verified, not verified, this doesn't hold a candle. These things that to that, these, sources and information that Republicans claim to have. And again, they are so bad at their job. They're sitting there building the anticipation, hyping this up, getting ready for the big game. Everybody sit down, get your pizza, get your, beer, get your game face on. We're going to sit down, and you turn on the TV to watch the kickoff, and it's just a bunch of moping folks with no information, a missing whistleblower, a missing informant, a known whistleblower that they still know where it is, but they're talking about it different. I mean, it's just all, there's nothing there.
Well, and this is the MO, because whenever you ask, I know this, okay, and members of Congress should certainly know this. If you ask the FBI for a document, they're not going to confirm or deny its existence, and they're not going to give it to you. And of course, they use that to say, their deep state's hiding it. And it's like, no, you should know when you go into a request like that that's going to be the answer. 1,000 times out of 1,000 times, that's the answer. And then to take it a step further in a letter written back to this, committee by the FBI, it's like, look, even if we could confirm or deny the existence of this report from the whatever whistleblower you're calling a whistleblower, if it's part of an open and ongoing investigation, you still wouldn't be able to have it. And no Judicial Watch, no Tom Fitton. You can't have it either under FOIA because it's part of an open and ongoing investigation, which had been going on into Hunter Biden for the last 4 years. So it's disingenuous. They make things up and then they point at the deep state when when the FBI won't produce these documents or confirm their existence, which is policy, longstanding policy on what happens when you ask for these kinds of documents. We've seen it time and again, and they'll continue to do it. And it's the way that they muddy the water, right? Like, give us this document. I can't confirm or deny its existence. You're covering up for the Bidens. Yeah, and it'll just continue.
Right. It's part of the game. And the problem is the production value of this game is horrible. And so, if done well, you can know and anticipate what you're not going to get. And you have built into your script, okay, we know that FBI and DOJ are going to come back and you say you can't have it. So that's fine. We'll make a big stink about that. We've got 3 kind of, witnesses, quote unquote witnesses that we think will be compelling that, we can get our point across. But it's somehow like they should know all of that and they don't. And so it's like watching, it's going from, if again, I hated the Benghazi hearings, but those were done. I mean, they weren't particularly clever, but at least they were effective. I mean, there was a real, the drip, drip, drip that they talked about trying to erode away support for Hillary Clinton. It worked. This ain't working. So, which I guess is good. Great.
They're doing the same with Pomerantz, too, right? They finally got Pomerantz to agree to come into an interview. The DA said, okay. And then Pomerantz in his opening statement is like, I'm not going to answer any questions about the investigation, ongoing or previous investigations. And by the way, the Manhattan DA is talking about potential criminal liability on my part for writing that book that I wrote. So I'm not going to answer any questions about the book because I'm going to use my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because of this potential sort of Damocles charges that could come down from the Manhattan DA against me. So you're not going to get anything interesting out of me. And then, of course, the Republicans use that as a deep state cover-up. They're not being forthcoming. We want transparency. When all of that is, first of all, his right to do, plead the Fifth, because of a pending or potential criminal investigation or criminal charges brought against him for releasing the book. I don't think that'll happen, but it's still within his rights. And for him to say, I'm not going to tell you anything because he was able to have a lawyer there. That was one of the conditions that Jim Jordan caved to. I'm not going to tell you anything about any open and ongoing investigation. Nothing. And that is policy, longstanding due process, constitutional policy. It could be bad for Trump as a criminal defendant for me to come out and taint a jury like that. And you want me to tell you all the bad shit Trump did and taint the jury so that he can't have a fair trial? No, I'm not going to do it. So there we are.
Yeah, again, Pomerantz is no dummy. I think we had yet more confirmation of that, and that, he protected himself. He did protect the things that were going on. He utterly stymied Jordan, and so it's one more sitting there holding an empty bag. Presumably that whatever was in it is sitting there next to his suit coat that he left back in Ohio, and it's not. it's neither surprising nor particularly helpful from a political standpoint for the Republicans. But, I don't think he said, well, we're going to keep pursuing this. Jordan, that is, I don't know that he's going to get anything down this particular path.
No, me neither. All right. Well, that is our show for today. Thank you again very much for listening to Clean Up on Aisle 45. Thanks so much to our patrons. We'll be back, Pete and I and the cat, this weekend for a bonus episode for patrons who are at the $2 level. And I'm sure it will be filled with all sorts of fun profanity. Given what happened last week, I think the floodgates are open. And I think...
Allison, this is the weekly hour up on Apple Podcasts is the family version. The bonus episode is the Blue Pete, as somebody said, is the more kind of Friday night with a cocktail, be a little more casual in our discussion. Particularly when they're morons, suitable for swearing at.
I'm the comedian for 10 years. I told dick jokes for 10 years, and you were like blowing me away with you. So there's the cop. There's anyway, thank you so much again to our patrons. You make the show possible. Thanks to everyone for listening. You make things happen as well. Share this podcast with your friends and family if you're enjoying it. We really appreciate you. And we'll see you next week. I've been Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Strzok.
And this is Clean Up on Aisle 45. Clean Up on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Clean Up on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.